Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about. This is my review of the 2020 film The Witches, starring Octavia Spencer and Anne Hathaway. This movie was created by Robert Zemeckis, who is a huge Hollywood name. Kenya Barris. Kenya Barris is an interesting guy. He's a successful black producer, actor, movie director, really, and it's important because we're coming out of a BLM summer, and we're trying to celebrate where black creators are having some major successes, and this is a major success. This is a very high budget film that was released. It was released on HBO Max. I have just a personal note here. I'm terribly sad that this was released on HBO Max. It was chosen to skip theater release. I totally understand that from the perspective. I think recently what's happened with theater releases is Chris Nolan did the world a favor. He released Tenet in theaters, and it told the industry what was going to happen. And Tenet was an interesting film, but it did not make any money, right? It went to a theater release, and I think it's by far the lowest money making film Christopher Nolan has ever touched. So this is among a growing group of films that were intended for theatrical release that have been shunted onto the small screen, right? And I did watch this on a small screen, and honestly, I watched this movie. This was 2 years ago, a year ago, right? I would have went to the theaters, I would have sat down, and for the hour and 45 minutes this movie was, I would have focused all my attention on it and watched it on the screen, and it would have, I think it would have captivated me a lot more than it did on the small screen. On the small screen, it was very, very sad just to see. So one, I watched this, split across 3 or 4 different watching sessions. Some of it I watched it on my small phone, my mobile phone. Some of it I watched it on my computer, at night. And then I think I maybe watched 20 minutes of it on my actual big screen, which is only like a 48-inch. That's not, and that's a big screen to me, but I know for, screen enthusiasts, that's pretty small. So what are you going to do? So I will say, here's my rating of this movie. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this movie. And I think it's really a just crying shame that this did not get the theatrical release that it deserved. Very, very sad. But this is a fantastic movie. It is currently, you can only watch it through HBO Max. Excuse me. I'm very blessed. I have HBO Max. I don't pay a cent for HBO Max. It comes with my phone plan, which is fantastic. It's a really delightful treat that I got this year, and it's been fantastic. I really, really love it, and it's super awesome for free, right? So this is by far one of the best things I've seen on HBO Max. It's really, really good as far as the content they have on that platform. Now, I want to talk about Kenya Barris. So Kenya Barris, he was with Robert Zemeckis. So as far as producers of this film, people who put this thing together, it's Robert Zemeckis. It's Guillermo del Toro of Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth. His work, I think, was probably focused on the witches themselves, these monster creatures, and he did a good job. He did a very good job with the design of the witches themselves. Anne Hathaway is a witch in this movie, and this film is really fascinating as far as how they portray witches and how this rolls out. By the way, this is an absolutely fantastic Halloween film. It's just tremendous. Really, really tremendous film for Halloween. It's like a perfect fit. But one of the things that Kenya Barris did is The Witches, if you're not aware, it's 2 things. It's the telling of a Roald Dahl story. So Roald Dahl is famous for James and the Giant Peach, and he's famous for Willy Wonka, right? Now, one thing that's very, very interesting is I watched the 19 so it's a retelling of it's a film version of a Roald Dahl book, but it is also a remake of a 1990s Disney film, okay? Which is really, really fascinating, okay? Now, I watched the 1990 Witches movie for the first time ever 2 months ago when it dropped on Netflix. So, The Witches dropped on Netflix 2 months ago, and it said Disney's The Witches. I watched the heck out of that. It was brilliant, and it was really fascinating. It was, actually, I shouldn't say it's brilliant. It's very problematic. It had some serious problems in it. And from the perspective of how the witches were portrayed, right? And I think if you didn't really trust Roald Dahl, and I think there's some reasons why you might not trust Roald Dahl, you're like, this is a problematic film, right? So one of the things I think is really great about by the way, the 2020 The Witches is light years ahead of the 1990 The Witches. It is far better. They're not even comparable. The 2020 The Witches is a much, much, much better film. Nobody needs to go back and watch the 1990 film since this is available now. This is a much better film. So one of the things I thought was really interesting is Kenya Barris actually applied. He actually made this film. He really brought forward black culture into this movie. I think the movie is really, so basically in the 1990s version, it was a little white boy and his white grandmother, and the 1990s movie does not have much representation of anyone who's not white, right? But this movie has white people and black people in it, and it is a much better depiction of American culture and like the melting pot that we are, and frankly, I think it's great that there's representation here, but the reality is the actors and actresses who replaced the white counterparts from the 1990s are just dramatically better, like in every aspect, right? So this is really just a tremendous film. I really, really liked it. A few notes. One, this movie should not be shown to any child who is not in junior high or above. I would not show this movie to a elementary age child. One of the things that, I think Roald Dahl's material really never was for kids, right? We know that now, I think. And then additionally, American cinema really usually uses child films a lot, in my opinion, to entertain adults. And I just, and I think Zemeckis and Barris and Del Toro, they really weren't thinking about kids very much when they made this film, and it's quite scary and quite frightening, and I don't really think it's a great pick for anybody who's junior high or who's not junior high or above. Junior high or above, awesome. And the reality is, I'm gonna warn you now. I got kids, right? I have a junior high son and a high school daughter. I wouldn't even attempt to show them this film. And the reason why is, one, not because they can't see it, because they're not going to have any interest, right? This movie is shot-for-shot remake of the 1990 movies with just better actors, better writing, better special effects, better everything, okay? It's tight, but it's really an adult film. Not an adult film from like any kind of like racy content, but the idea that this would appeal to any child is kind of ludicrous. I think the real the real sweet spot for this is like 25 to 95. I don't think anybody else is really gonna vibe with this movie, because it really has nothing to do with children. It's a good spooky movie, and I think it's a good spooky movie. But I think elementary educated kids will get really freaked out by this movie because there's some really scary stuff in it for them. And then I think millennials, like Gen Zs and millennials, generally won't care about this film because it really isn't. It's not a Gen Z or a millennial product in any way. But if you're one generation up, like Gen X or a boomer, I think you're gonna dig this movie. It is really, really fantastic. I absolutely love this film. 5 out of 5 stars. Thumbs up for The Witches, 2020 The Witches. You could check it out on HBO Max right now, and highly recommend this film. Have you seen it? I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. If you've seen the 1990s version, I'd love to hear your theory, your theory on that. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.